It's 2012. The fantasy lovers in the gaming world are still frothing at the mouth thanks to Bethesda's massively popular title, Skyrim. The Witcher was a word almost no one would recognize. It was a weird word. And yet 1 year later, in 2013, a game was announced that would make this title, this word, one of the most beloved fantasy worlds out there. A fantasy world whose popularity would spread like wildfire and cultivate an entirely new expectation we had when it came to open world RPGs, much like Skyrim did. Is it like The Witcher 3? Would be a fair question to ask for most. And all of a sudden, a world was made where everyone would know the word Witcher. All hype and glaze aside, it has been nearly a decade since The Witcher 3 graced our hands and screens, but somehow this game has not only retained majority of its player base, it has managed to grow in popularity as time went on. How? What made this game such a standout title? What made it resistant to critics, combat crybabies and crippling cross-examination? How did this title become such a towering figure? This is your only spoiler warning, by the way, so if you continue watching, I hope you enjoy yet another video on The Witcher 3. The story of Geralt and Ciri is one that will stick with you long after the credits have rolled. Regardless of the outcome you achieved, whether it be happy or sad, you are left with a feeling of emptiness when you are spawned back into Kaer Morhen and that soft melody starts creeping into your soul. But let's take a step back, because the ending is only the cherry on top of a very large cake. Much of this game's success stems from the story and how it wraps you up in its complexity and attention to detail. For both newcomers to the series and book readers, there's a lot yet to tickle your fancy. The Bloody Baron's questline is one example you'll hear being used on repeat to describe the depth of the story on display here. It is riddled with morally grey themes and opens your eyes to see that not everything is as it seems. And very quickly it becomes apparent that your choices carry impact and forces you to then consider every choice you make more carefully, as they can alter your outcome drastically. During the quest with the Whispering Hillock in Velen, for example, your choices here can be the reason why children are eaten, or it could be the reason that the Baron hangs himself. A major part of the Witcher universe, a part that carries over into the experiences that we hold so dear, is that there is almost never a clear-cut right or wrong choice, and the ones that present themselves as such usually comes with a catch later down the line. This story is one told in a very dark and depressing world. Death follows everyone around. Be it in the form of a plague, a sword, or a pyre, the lives of the people who inhabit this world are snuffed out like candles in the wind. But how then is a game with such a grim and depressing world praised for having such a great story? Well, there are lots of moments in this game that balance out an otherwise grim experience and can potentially come to a happy conclusion based on your choices and actions throughout the game. But for now, let's continue with the sad, because I am a sad person. When you are in Velen and following along with the story, most if not all of it is depressing. Not only has the region been torn apart by war, but it also suffers from a plague, from poverty, from hunger. These ailments can be observed through NPC dialogue and can be seen through the lack of food and empty farms. The truth uncovered during the quests in Velen are equally horrible. Parents offer up their children to be eaten or sacrificed in order to not have an extra mouth to feed. Evil witches rule the land and are where the previously mentioned children are sent. And if you work your way through the Baron's questline, you'll realize that it's just one heartbreak after another. But then, if you travel up to Novigrad, an altogether different beast awaits you. The city is abuzz with commerce and trade is the name of the game. Sure, poverty and hunger still has a presence and influence in Novigrad, but for the most part, people here are getting by or are outright wealthy. The music adds to the tempo and feel you get when entering the big city, and it is a completely different feeling you get from Velen. Novigrad houses most of the light-hearted quests. Sure, there are serious moments, but this section of the game offers a much-needed change of pace after the gloomy mess that is Velen. And not to mention, Novigrad is outright one of the best cities in any open-world game, period. It is exceptionally well thought out, with its different districts dividing up the poor and the wealthy, the different markets in which you can get lost through immersion, and the beautifully lit up torches all around the city. It is a beautifully balanced experience that latches onto your memory and tarnishes your outlook on other video games. Much of this experience comes down to the attention to detail, especially when it involves player choice and action. The sheer volume of consequences that could potentially arise thanks to you is staggering, to say the least. The order in which you can tackle the main quest just adds to the replayability and longevity of this game. This is something that CDPR prides themselves on.
What happens if you go through the lake that you were not supposed to go? At first we were like, yeah, you'll drown because the water is super cold, you know? But it's like some new system that we didn't have. You know, things like these. Later on we would say, well, what if he goes through the lake? Whatever. Like, we just covered the option and something else happened.
I mean, you can uncover a plethora of hidden details, quests and dialogue that you simply wouldn't experience in a single playthrough. There are not only 3 main endings, but different endings to side quests, Witcher contracts, and both the DLCs. The amount of content here demands additional playthroughs. There's just so much here to sink your teeth into, and almost all of it is compelling enough to sear into your memory as a lasting reminder that you had just experienced something close to perfection. If I mention the Pan contract, for example, almost everyone who had done it will immediately know what I'm talking about and think back on it with fondness. A piece of side content that literally takes less than 2 minutes to complete, has absolutely no real meaning other than finding a pan, is something so memorable that almost everyone who experienced it will remember it for the rest of their lives. That is the level of quality that you get with this game. Seemingly useless crap that makes you smile every time you think back on it. And believe it or not, this level of quality only gets better as you get into the DLCs. Hearts of Stone has some of the strongest storytelling in the entire game. This introduction to your potential teammates, for example, is top tier level of presentation and hype.
Specialities, rhythmic gymnastics, breaking and entering, lots of fish. Casimir Bassi, native of Mahakam, a specialist in controlled explosions. Folks say he could blow Novigrad to the high heavens with but a pinch of saltpeter. Bolt door for him should be a cinch.
It also comes with some of the best antagonists in all of gaming. The back and forth we experience with Gaunter and Olgierd is storytelling at its finest. You are left to choose which of the two you think is worth siding with. Do you go with evil incarnate, or do you choose to give a broken yet despicable man a second chance? In Blood and Wine, you are thrown into a landscape that is the polar opposite of what you have been experiencing for the past 90 or so hours. Almost everywhere you look in the base game, you hear complaints of poverty. You see it, and in some cases you even feel it. Tucson is the land of love and wine. A more cultured nation waits to greet you, along with sprawling and luscious landscapes, just waiting to drop your jaw. But even this colorful image has a dark canvas. The beast of Beauclair, a higher vampire, is ripping questionable knights apart, and you are summoned to deal with this threat. Blood and Wine not only treats the player with a new map to explore and new toys to uncover, it almost acts as a love letter to the books if you are familiar with them. Knowledge of the novels enrich this already fabulous experience, and you will be left with many smiles on your mug. These are truly some of the best DLCs to be ever made, and that is something very few games can boast. For almost a decade, the story of The Witcher 3 stood tall as one of the best. The atmosphere is one riddled with nostalgic bait. If you hear the background song that plays in Skellige, Velen or Novigrad, you'd be hard pressed to try and avoid playing through the entire game again. Each and every region in this game has a uniqueness to it which lends itself out to live rent-free in your mind. Skellige, Velen, Kaer Morhen, Tucson, all of these places has made a distinct impression on all of us and became one of the most memorable games out there. Don't get me wrong, this remains a brutal world. The world of The Witcher is possessed by greed, selfishness, danger and all other negative feelings you could associate with our society today. It is by far one of the most beautifully hideous and complex open worlds that sports an atmosphere almost unrivaled in its splendor. But now we come to one of the more controversial debates on The Witcher 3. Yennefer or Triss? Just kidding, we're here to talk about gameplay, but the answer is Yen. So on this subject you'll see one of two opinions. Some say the gameplay is terrible, outdated and clunky, while others insist it is the best thing since the invention of the wheel. I am here to tell you that neither of those opinions are correct. You see, combat is the gameplay element you'll engage with the most, followed up by exploration. So let's look at them one at a time. Combat suffers from a very little yet significant problem. It needs to be experienced on deathmatch difficulty for it to feel engaging. On easier difficulties, almost all of the combat encounters can be completed by dodging and attacking. And while it may feel good for the first hour, you'll quickly get bored of it and form the opinion that the combat is shallow. On deathmatch, you pretty much need to make use of everything in your arsenal to stand a chance. There are many different signs, potions, bombs, weapons and even simple combat inputs to make use of, all of which enhance the combat experience and make you realize that it's not bad at all. However, this is a problem because why then include a difficulty option at all? They could have easily pulled a From Software on us and not give us a choice in the matter, and a new subspecies of get good sweats could emerge and form the cultish mentality that so many of the Souls boys have. I can already smell the comments. That was a joke, for the most part. But deathmatch is not a permanent fix because after about level 20 you start getting overpowered to a point where you'll have to nerf yourself in order to keep being challenged and engaged. Which is obviously less than ideal, but what can you do? Next up we've got exploration. This is easily the element of gameplay that deserves to be flagged as outdated. Your horse gets stuck on nothing far too many times. Your character will put out candles instead of opening doors. You slide way too far if you stray one step off a mountain range. And grabbing onto ledges after jumping more often than not results in you falling to your death or forces you to reclimb whatever obstacle you were trying to scale in the first place. And finally, the camera sometimes has a mind of its own, insistent on seeing what's up Geralt's arse. Now I know all of this might seem like a good enough reason to not play the game after so many years, but wait, there's more. The one and only redeeming fact about all of this is the fact that you get used to it well before it scares you off and it becomes a problem, and you start to even incorporate tactics to overcome these issues. These problems are not game breaking and they even add to the game's charm. You'll see memes littered all over social media posts that involve The Witcher, depicting these issues rather hilariously, and in the end it adds to the experience that many of us share. And if you can forgive Skyrim for it, then you can forgive the good old Witcher. My first time playing this game was back when the Game of the Year edition had dropped with the DLCs included, and I had finished it 3 times, back to back. I had to force myself to stop. And since then, I've completed it about 8 or 9 times, and I'm sure many fans can testify that this game is a game we will be continuously coming back to and playing for years to come. I tried my best to not spoil much of the game, so if you are a newcomer that wishes to experience this work of art, I highly recommend that you do. The Witcher 3 will go down in history as one of the best games ever made. And to those of you waiting for the Joseph Anderson video, stay strong, I'm sure he'll post it soon. In the past, my videos were focused on following the trends and doing what everyone else was doing. And I did not really focus on the type of content I wanted to make. I didn't speak about the games I really wanted to speak about, or in the way that I wanted to speak about them. So this video was my first real attempt to try and captivate my viewers and give them an enjoyable experience. And I'd really like to hear feedback from you guys on how I did, and if you'd like to see more of these kinds of videos, because they are really time intensive. So yeah, it would really help to know if you guys enjoyed it. With working a full-time job and studying, this video took me about 3 months to make. Obviously, I'm hoping to do this full time, so if that becomes a reality, this could be done on a much more frequent basis. That time to make these videos can be cut down significantly. I did enjoy making this video, so I'd be more than happy to oblige if it turns out that this video does well, especially if it just does better than all my other content. But like I said, I don't want to wait 3 or 4 months in between videos to bring to you guys. So letting me know that you enjoyed it by either liking or subscribing really helps me out. But yeah, for now, thank you for watching, especially if you made it this far. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a fabulous day. Stay safe, and may God bless you all.